Hello everyone. My name's Chris Warburton Brown. I'm the Research Director of the Permaculture Association Britain, and it's a great honour to be invited to speak at this conference on permaculture and ecologically sound agriculture in the Ukraine today. I'm currently at home in England, but my thoughts are there with you in Ukraine. I hope it's all going very well, and I congratulate Pavlo and the organising team on putting together such a great event. Next slide, please, Pablo. I work for the Permaculture Association Britain, which some of you may have heard of and some of you maybe not. I'll introduce very briefly the association. We're a charity, UK registered charity, although increasingly we work internationally as well as within the UK. And we work to support people to design thriving communities, to promote the uptake of permaculture globally, and to improve the practice of permaculture wherever it's practiced. The association has about 1,500 members, mostly in the UK, a few outside, about 10,000 people in a wider communication network who we communicate with very regularly. And the association has grown a lot in the last year or so. We've currently got 23 part-time staff, which is the biggest it's ever been. The association is about 35 years old, and it's grown steadily during that time. An annual turnover of something in the region of £400,000. And increasingly, in many aspects of our work, we're moving from a UK focus to a global focus. We're still, a lot of our work is still very much rooted in the UK, but we're increasingly looking to do international work. In 2015, we hosted the International Permaculture Conference and Convergence in London. And that was a huge push to us moving to a much more international focus in our work because of the connections we made at that event. Next slide, please. I've been in post since 2012, just coming up to 6 years since I started. Initially, I was taken on as research coordinator. More recently, I've moved up to research director. I'm not sure what those titles mean, but director is a slightly grander title, I suppose, than coordinator. This, as far as we know, was the first research coordinator or director role in the world for permaculture research. And the idea was from the beginning, and still is, to use evidence to improve permaculture practice and to build links with students, academics and practitioners. Again, initially with a UK focus, but increasingly, particularly since the 2015 IPC in London, with an international focus. When I started, I was only working 2 days a week due to success in attracting funding for various bits of the work. I'm now working 4 days a week, which is as much as I want to. So as far as I'm concerned, that's full time for me, and I'm very happy with that and the way the post has grown and evolved over time. Next slide, please. So why did the Permaculture Association Britain decide in 2012 that research was so important, and why we kept on supporting it for the last 6 years in the way that we have? Well, very simply, everything that we do, everything that I do, is based around two things. Either building a strong evidence base to show that permaculture works to a fairly skeptical, often a fairly skeptical world, but also to ourselves as well, to show to ourselves what works and maybe sometimes what doesn't work or what works less well. So a lot of that is finding existing evidence, but also creating some new evidence around the things that we do in permaculture, the practices that we do. And that's very broad. Obviously, permaculture traditionally focused on food growing, but a lot of research that I've seen is around social permaculture, benefits of permaculture to health, around community organization and permaculture, around economics and permaculture. So it's very broad remit. Secondly, to test and improve the permaculture practice that we do. Permaculture uses practices from many different areas. Just within growing, it draws heavily on a whole range of agroecological or regenerative practices, some of which are very well established, some of which are new, a small number of which are quite unique to permaculture. So testing those, checking that they work, and improving the way that they're, we can make them work better. Permaculture research, as soon as I started, or before I began, the Permaculture Association was aware that permaculture research is not very visible in journals and academia. It's becoming more visible, and I've really seen in the last 6 years that it is increasingly visible, but it's still quite hidden, and that's one reason why I very much welcome this conference in the Ukraine that you're running. So we felt from the very beginning there's a really important role to bring together those people who are scattered all over the world. Many people are doing permaculture research. I mean, I would say that anyone doing gardening, everybody says, oh, that didn't go very well this year. Next year, I'll try and grow a different plant or try and do it differently, try a new technique. I think everyone's researching. Some people are more formally researching and engaged in academia and seeking to publish. Some are researching informally in their own growing spaces or their own social permaculture spaces. So we felt and still feel it very important to bring together people doing permaculture research to learn from each other, to work together, and to share our results and to share our enthusiasm. Next slide, please. Thank you. So on that basis, we set up the Permaculture International Research Network. We were lucky to get a modest but adequate amount of funding from Lush Cosmetics. I don't know if they're in the Ukraine. They're a very large soap manufacturing company. We have very strong links to permaculture. So we had 2 years of funding there. We launched it at the International Permaculture Convergence in London in September 2015, just over 2 years ago, with the aim to connect permaculture researchers globally and to share quality research, some of it produced by those researchers, some of it produced by other people who may have no connection with permaculture, but whose research has lessons that we can draw for permaculture practice. And when we launched, we had 400 members in 50 countries, which we were very pleased with. Next slide, please. I've led it from the beginning, supported by interns, volunteer interns. We've had 2 or 3 really good interns who've supported the network getting going. Initially, we carried out a survey to find out what people wanted, and that was well responded to. Lots of people had ideas. There was clearly an appetite for this network. This was going back to 2013 and 2014. People were excited about what we wanted to do, lots of different ideas about what the network would look like, what we could provide, and so on. The main thing was about connecting people, connecting researchers together. On the back of work we did at the IPC in 2015, we created a series of subgroups to focus on different research topics. And we had this amazing idea back then to launch a permaculture research journal, which we were very excited about. And I spent about 18 months trying to fundraise to get that going. But unfortunately, both the subgroups and the journal initiatives didn't really succeed. I think people were very enthusiastic, but it proved difficult to get people to commit time or money to those initiatives. And so eventually, after 18 months of trying, we stopped those things, which was a shame. But in spite of that, the network has continued to grow. It's now doubled in size from when it started. Next slide, please. So we're currently at 900 members in about 80 countries. I haven't done a count recently, actually, of how many countries we've got. The membership is just hovering around 900 at the moment. I continue to manage it, but it no longer has any funding support. So the time that I have to put in to the network is less than it was. Nevertheless, it still continues to have 4 main activities, and we'll go through those quickly. Next slide, please. The most basic activity is that everyone who signs up to the network, which you can do through the PIRN website. So if you're interested in signing up, just the address will be on the last slide. But if you just search on Google for Permaculture International Research Network home, you'll get straight there, and you can just sign up straight away on the there on the page. The most basic thing you get is every couple of months you'll get an e-bulletin. This was the last one we sent out. Usually has 4 or 5 items in. You can see on this one, the headline was obviously the International Permaculture Conference that had just taken place in India. We have calls for support or involvement in research projects from people on there. We have some reports on research that people have conducted and so on. So a range of different activities that we highlight, and you just get that in your inbox if you sign up. So that's a very simple requires no effort, and something very simple for me to put together requires no effort for you to receive that if you join. Next slide, please. I also run the Permaculture Research Digest, which any of you who are doing research, I suggest you have a look at. Something I'm very proud of. The Research Digest I actually created before PIRN. I created it almost as soon as I started, so there's about 5.5 years of, or 5 years of stuff on there. And it just pulls together recently published items of permaculture related research. So if you've done any research, if it's in the public domain, that could be published in a journal, but also it could be online if you've got a website with some research on, or if you put your thesis, uploaded a thesis or a dissertation or any piece of research somewhere. Do let me know, send it to me. My email was at the start of the presentation. It's research@permaculture.org.uk. And people do send me loads of stuff. In fact, I currently have a backlog. I've got about 40 items waiting in the inbox. So they'll be coming through hopefully over the next few weeks. So for each item, it links, there's a hyperlink goes directly to the original source, whether that's a journal article, an online article, a report, a website, whatever it is. And I put in a short description, about 100 or 150 word summary of the contents there. So I don't know if you can see on the slide here, the first one showing is a journal article about the link between species richness in what you're growing and healthy diet, particularly looking at the people in the global south. So the more species that you've got growing around you, the more likely it is that your diet will be healthy. So that for those of us who are into polycultures, you know, it's not explicitly about permaculture, but it's some nice support for polycultural ideas that a healthy diet comes from you know, healthy land and a rich species diversity. And that's the kind of thing, I mean, sometimes I put things on there that are explicitly around permaculture, sometimes things which are you know, related like this item. So I'd encourage you to have a look at that. Next slide, please. I also give lots of general coordination and support. So this was an email that I received earlier this week. I've anonymized it, but very typical of the kind of thing I get from a master's student, just asking me to look at a thesis proposal and give some feedback. She's in mainland Europe. I won't say where she is because I want to leave it anonymous, but she's doing an interesting permaculture related dissertation. So I've been supporting her a bit with that insofar as I can. And I do get a lot of these, and I can't always give people a lot of support, but I always reply, and I always try and give people, you know, some advice and support, and hopefully when they finish their dissertation, they send me some results. Next slide, please. And then we provide some training. This is the Permaculture Research Handbook, which is really aimed, it's freely available online at the Permaculture Association website. You can find it very easily on there. It's really aimed at people who don't have a research background or an academic research background, permaculture practitioners who want to firm up their research and make it a bit more solid. So it's really using a familiar permaculture design tool, as Sadimets, which some of you will know. Sadimets design system just takes you through that and links each stage of the Sadimets process to a stage in the academic research process. So assuming that most people who do a PDC or introductory permaculture course or have much experience of permaculture design will be familiar with Sadimets, what I was wanting to do was explicitly say, well, here's a design process you're already familiar with, and it actually overlaps with an academic design, you know, how you can design an piece of research work. Maybe not academic, but semi-academic, and certainly strong enough to produce some good evidence. So that's been out for about, is it 3 or 4 years, that, and I'd encourage you to look at it if you're interested. It's got lots of good resources in it. It has some basic stuff about what research questions you would address, how you would go about answering them, the kind of evidence you could assemble, qualitative and quantitative evidence, a little bit of introductory stuff on stats, and drawing conclusions and writing up. It's all in there so that somebody using this handbook who is already producing work of research of some experience of practical research could use this handbook to turn it into something that they could then share in a useful way and some useful evidence with the rest of the permaculture world. Next slide, please. In terms of projects, we always thought that that PIRN would lead to spin-off projects as people met and collaborated, and that maybe hasn't happened as much as we would have liked, although I hope that will continue to happen and happen more going forward. But the big one for us has been the Information Fraction on Climate Change project, which is a direct spin-off from PIRN and people I've met through PIRN. We secured £75,000 from VK Rasmussen Foundation, who are an American foundation, do a lot of work tackling climate change, charitable foundation, to do a project on permaculture solutions, presenting permaculture solutions to climate change. And we're currently building a quite ambitious website. The strapline is 50 actions, 50 climate change actions, each in 50 words. And we haven't got this is not ready yet. I can't show it with you, but very soon it will be. In the next few months we'll be starting testing online this new website, so we're pretty excited about it. It's gone very well. It's been a strong collaboration, international collaboration. We've got an Australian partner and several European partners. It's been going very well, so it's something I'm very excited about, and it shows, I think, what can happen when people are thinking on similar lines. We've got two university partners. We've got Lisbon and Central Queensland, and then non-university partners who have a lot of expertise and knowledge about climate change as well. So I think this is a really interesting example of what can happen if researchers are able to link up internationally, collaborate together, and get some funding to do something which probably on their own they wouldn't be able to do. So in the next few months, look out for this website coming over the hill. I'm very excited about it, presenting some really strong permaculture solutions to both climate change adaptation and reducing reducing people's carbon footprint. Next slide, please. So that's all about the Permaculture International Research Network. Permaculture Association are involved in a set of other networks as well, which we're supporting the creation of. For those of you who maybe aren't so interested in research or have other interests as well as research, the International Permaculture Education Network, IPEN, is currently just in the process of launching. The web address is there for anyone who's interested in that, if you're a permaculture teacher or educator. Again, a similar thing, trying to get people networking and sharing resources, working together globally. Permaculture Collab, which is about trying to get people thinking strategically together about how permaculture can develop internationally and how it moves forward. Because as you know, permaculture is a very dispersed, distributed, localized movement, which is a great strength, but there's also some advantage to working together internationally and coordinating some work and some efforts. So that's what Collab's about. We have demonstration networks of permaculture sites. We've got about 100 in the UK. Last couple of years, they've been setting up one across Scandinavia. And Pablo tells me that you've got one being set up in Eastern Europe at the moment to demonstrate permaculture sites that people can go and visit. So that's a practitioner network where people can connect together, promote and share what they're doing. I'm also involved in the European network around Citizen Science Observatory around soil, the Grow Soil Observatory. I won't say much about that now. It's a very interesting project. We're looking to create a network of citizen science growers across Europe who are interested in experiments around regenerative practices and permaculture. If you're interested in that, join. If you're a grower, join. The address is there. In April, we're launching our next big activity towards getting people to experiment together across Europe around growing practices. I think that's going to be exciting. And then finally, much more passive kind of thing, the Permaculture Knowledge Base, which we host, which has about 200 different pages on the website dealing with permaculture ethics, permaculture principles, and lots of permaculture actions and activities, things like straw bale building or swales or teaching different teaching techniques and approaches to permaculture. All have their own page on there. Sort of practical solutions. So if you want to find out about any aspect of permaculture or related stuff, have a look on there. I wrote a lot of it myself, and my colleagues read it, so I guess I'm bound to say it's quite good. But I do think it's a pretty strong offering to the permaculture world. Have a browse through there. You may learn something or find out something useful. And if anyone has any feedback about any of those networks, I would like to get in touch. Email me or my colleagues. If you get on the Permaculture UK, Permaculture Britain website, you can get in touch with us. So let's just finish off with looking at next steps for PIRN, where we want to go next. With the next slide, please, Pablo. So coming to my final slide, what are the plans for PIRN moving forward? Well, we want to continue with the e-bulletin, the Permaculture Research Digest, with general coordination work. All of those things I am doing now and will continue to do month by month. But the biggest need we've got now is really for a shareable member database. And in hindsight, we probably should have created this from the beginning. We thought we had a way to do this, and then we discovered that it doesn't meet with the new European Union data protection rules. So we're looking at that again, but hopefully in the next month or two, we'll be able to launch a way in which members will be able to contact each other directly and identify each other by country and by research interests. And we're trying to do that in a way that makes it manageable, because a list of just 900 names is not very useful. So we want to do that in a way that people can contact and find each other by their research interests and where they are in the world. Because we're not funded anymore to do this, although we are still looking for continuation funding if we can find some, Permaculture Association Britain feels that we need to move beyond PAB. I can continue to support, but we're looking for more allies and helpers to help us move this forward, and we're starting to pull together a team of people who I think are excellent, small group of people internationally, including Pablo, to help us move forward and get the most from PIRN and make it really successful. We should be running, we had a research training event, which I should have mentioned before, in Portugal in 2017, which Lisbon University co-organised with PIRN, and we're hoping to run another one in the UK. That'll be open to people from all over Europe. Hopefully in early 2019, we're going to run that, which is a 5-day research training event for permaculture practitioners and academics who want to find out more and get into permaculture. We need, of course, lots of ideas and enthusiasm to create the thriving network that we want to see, and I hope this presentation will inspire some of that in you, the audience. And I'm still very interested in working out what members want from the network. I think increasingly as we move forward, it needs to be less and less based with PAB in the UK and with me, and much more about members themselves creating the network they want to get what they would like, what excites them, what their needs are, how they can link up. I think with the Information for Action on Climate Change project, we've shown what's possible if people get together. That's a substantial 2-year funded project, which I think is going to have fantastic results. Wouldn't have happened without PIRN, and I really want to see if we can find ways in which other people can get similarly exciting outcomes from their involvement with PIRN. Next slide. Oh yeah, just to say, join. It's all there. Sign up to PIRN, sign up to one of the other networks that I've mentioned, join the Permaculture Association Britain if you want to support this work going forward. Thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing any questions that people might have.